The Gophers bring back their starting quarterback Tanner Morgan, preseason All-American running back Ibrahim, and so many others that only one team in the Big Ten has more production returning from 2020. Here's Morgan from Gophers training camp with Howard Griffith.
Pleased to be joined by Gophers quarterback Tanner Morgan. Tanner, let me take you back to last year, and you went through a lot of adversity on and off the field. What did you learn about yourself going through all of that?
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned about myself is what it means to have a family, a culture that we have, and to really use it. Use the people around you. Don't bury things. Talk about things you're going through, and always respond to whatever adversity comes, because it's going to come on the field, off the field, and you always got to respond to it and have an answer to it. So I think I really learned that.
Your offensive coordinator says you guys are in one another's heads, so you're on the same page. How does that translate when you're on the field?
It's amazing, because when he calls something, it's like, okay, I know why he's calling this. But it's really cool. It's been an awesome, off season, being able to learn, study film, study all kinds of different film, opponents' film, different situations in games. But it's awesome to be able to be on the same page and understand really the why behind things, because we focus a lot on, why this? In our culture, we always explain the whys behind things, and it's the same thing in our offense.
Last one for me. What are some of the keys for success for this team?
Yeah, I think some keys for the success for this team, it all starts with being together. And we've done an outstanding job of that in training camp, of competing with each other, offense, defense, different positions, pushing each other to change our best on a daily basis, but also just being together on the field, off the field, through the adversity, through the good times, through the highs and lows, being able to stay together through all of that, and then continuing to establish our identity as a football team. And as we continue to do that every day, it's going to be exciting to see what we can do, and I'm excited to watch our team go play ball.
Well, good luck. Stay healthy.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a
Thanks
great
for
year.
having me. Appreciate it.
Down 25 players and staff tonight, combined with COVID and also other injuries. Minnesota wins.
Players not being on the field. COVID-19. People want to ignore that.
One day we have a guy in the room, the next 3 hours later he's popped for a COVID test.
Obviously, there was a lot of things. It was obviously a weird year.
You had so much optimism, too, with Tanner Morgan coming back, Rashad Bateman opting back in, or players on offense. You really thought this group would be able to explode.
This year, with us being able to be back in the office and being in the facility with each other, we're becoming that player-led team.
I don't put a lot of stock in what that record was, and now we have an opportunity to get back to what we really want to be able to do and where we want to go.
There's no doubt PJ is right. COVID affected Minnesota's defense last year. Also, no question the Gophers know they need to be better after giving up more than 30 points and 415 yards per game. Joshua Perry is standing by with one of the men in charge of anchoring this year's Gopher D.
Boye Mafe joining us, the outstanding defender for the Golden Gophers. Let's take a look at last year. Obviously, it was a tough year. You had some COVID issues. There were guys out of the lineup. It became a little bit difficult, obviously, just inserting people and then hoping to make it to game day. What are some takeaways of things that you learned from last year?
For last year, the big thing is that we weren't as connected as we are this year, I feel. As of, the defense, we've had a lot of people last year who stepped in the roles that they may have not been ready for. We had a lot of young guys playing last year. At one point, we had 9 freshmen on the field, and, that's never easy for a team no matter what situation you're in. So I think the biggest difference from last year to this year is that we've actually had the time to have those reps and have those things to learn, so all our young guys can become mature and be able to step into those roles and be ready to play.
Well, you talked about that maturity in the young guys playing. You have a veteran defense coming back. How important is it to have that experience on the field?
I think it's very important, because the fact is, last year, like I said, we had a lot of guys step into roles that they weren't ready for, or not necessarily ready, but had enough time to adapt to. So I think going into this year, we have that time in spring ball and summer and fall camp to actually have that connectivity and have that trust and have that, build that relationship between not just the D linemen and each other, but D linemen and linebackers. Linebackers to safeties to DBs, and have that trust between each other to know everyone's going to do their job and everyone's going to play well. So that's the biggest thing.
This team is big on culture. You talk about all the different things that go on. Leadership's obviously important. How do you see that play out on the field every day?
I mean, the culture, we talk about it every day. There's not a day that we don't have a team meeting about it or have a conversation about it. And through every situation, you have to bring the culture. Then even if it's bad, if it's good, there's a way to make it better. There's a way to, strive to be better. Even if you're in a bad situation, there's a way to bounce back. There's a way to switch the situation. We don't believe in momentum. We don't believe in things of like spiraling downhill, but we always find a way to, if something's going bad for you, you can find a way to get out of that hole or find a way to make it go better for you and turn the leaf.
What do you want the identity of your defense to look like this year?
For the defense, I think as a whole, we have a theme going around, and we have the knock. And our knock is that we're all in it knocking together. We are the one who knocks. We are the one who's going to come out and play, and we're going to see unity and just going out to play with joy with each other. And honestly, we're not a defense worried about stats and worried about individual accolades. We're worried about playing together as a unit, because if you play together as a unit, all the individual accolades will come eventually. So that's not the worry for us, but more about playing together.
You got a great quarterback, Tanner Morgan. Obviously, Ibrahim is a running back who's one of the best in the conference. How does going against guys like that in practice every day work to your advantage?
I mean, it's amazing, honestly, to have them be able to talk to each other. It's things that we see on the field. We'll sit in the locker room after practice and just talk about, when you do that play, what is something that I could look for? When Mel steps up in the pocket, all those types of things is just things that you can learn from each other, and we're taking those opportunities to learn from each other so that when it does come to game day, we can just have that little bit more of an advantage. And having that veteran guys in those positions, we can, this is a time where you can take those small tendencies and small things that you can learn to improve your game. Not just the X's and O's and doing your assignment, but just little things like that to improve our game, each other.
I'll get you out of here on this one. You prepared for it already. You kind of had your night scrimmage on a Thursday night. Mm-hmm. You've got Ohio State coming up week 1. It's going to be a big game. What is your team's mentality just in preparation for such a big game early on?
I mean, every team we play this year is going to be a big game, and every team, they're going to be a great team we play this year. So, honestly, preparing for them, it's an excitement in the room, and everybody's ready to get back to the season. And we're going to have our fans back. And the biggest thing we missed from last year was our fans, not having them in the stadium with us. And, the fan base in Minnesota's loyalty. So, just being able to get back to that situation, be able to go out there and play with them in front of our hometown, in front of my hometown, in front of the state of Minnesota is just going to be exciting. I can't wait to do it.
Yeah, definitely will be exciting to have fans in the stadium. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
In addition to the opener against Ohio State, Minnesota has another tough crossover late in the year against Indiana, and that's on the heels of another road game at Iowa. Howard Griffith and Gerry DiNardo have more on why the Gopher team is built to handle it all.
Coach, we've had the opportunity to see the Golden Gophers somewhere in between probably 20 and 25 times since we started here in the network, and I got to tell you, this is the best-looking team that I can remember. I mean, they're as talented physically. They look great. They practice well. What were your initial impressions?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Plus, for me, Howard, I lost track because of COVID. I mean, they were one of the teams that really got hit hard. The quality of the depth of this team over the 15 years that we've done this, it's never been like this. The line of scrimmages is really deep. The skill, I mean, this is a complete team. This West Division race, I mean, it's going to be as competitive as it's ever been since we've been divided east and west.
Yeah, I know you talked about the offensive line, you talked about the defensive line, but I look at it from an offensive standpoint, and I also look at Tanner Morgan being able to bounce back to where he was 2 years ago. I mean, because he was playing games where he was completing close to 70%, if not over 70% of his passes. And he just seems like a different young man right now. So I'm going to be anxious to see him play.
Yeah, I think part of that is Mike Sanford. This is his second year as offensive coordinator, but last year, obviously with COVID, it really wasn't a year where you could install a new offense. The spring game probably should have given us a heads up. They had a draft, and they had a competitive game, and you can't do that unless you have some depth. So deeper and more talented than I can remember here.
I know this is going to be a fun team to watch. The West is going to be fun.
This team really offensively revolved around Mohamed Ibrahim last year, had a fabulous year. What's the next step for him in evolving his game?
Well, I think it's, for him, he's had the whole year to be able to lead the entire room. And I think when you look behind him, Trey Potts and Cam Wiley and Kai Thomas has had a really good offseason, Bryce Williams. And then you got a guy by the name of Bucky Irving, who's a true freshman that comes in, and he's going to help us in some limited roles. But I think for Mohamed to be the best Mohamed he can be, the other guys have to be the strongest they can be. And then, Mohamed can be fresher. He can be able to take more carries. He can be able to survive and continue to be at his best towards the end of the year, too, and not banged up.
Defensively, you weren't where you needed to be last year. And again, you played a ton of young guys. You had COVID impacting you. That being said, you got better as last year went on that side of the ball. How have you been able to carry it forward here in camp?
Yeah, I mean, the experience is what makes you better, right? I mean, going through all the adversity, and you look at our D-line now, our front seven, and we've got ones, we've got twos, and they've all started college football games. We have more depth there than we've ever had here at the University of Minnesota since I've been here. And then in the back end the same way. So there's been a ton of guys that have played a lot of football. I think everybody's just really itching to go. Everybody, probably around the country, especially in our conference, wants to get out there and play football again. We've had a very physical camp. Our players have done a great job of fighting through all the adversity that's come their way. Not only that, but practices. I mean, we ramped it up and played pretty good for a while. So we got to be able to back off a little bit to get their legs back here, and we'll be ready to go come game time.
One of the things you've done to reinforce that defense is bring in some guys from the portal. You've done it on the other side of the ball as well. Who are some of the newcomers people ought to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I think, what you look at, Niles Pinckney, who's a nose guard from Clemson, and he's a pleasant surprise, and you always know, okay, he's a two-time captain. He's won national titles at Clemson. He's really good. But when you get here, you just don't know that much because you don't get a ton of time to recruit transfers. And you get him over here, and he's as good as advertised, not only on the field, but he's a tremendous leader. D'Angelo Carter, who played last year as a freshman, he's gotten a lot better. Micah Treadway has really rose to the occasion, and that whole front seven has gotten a lot better. Boye Mafe and Assezi, and we brought in Jack Gibbons at a linebacker position, and from Abilene Christian, and he's as good as advertised. So we feel really good about the transfers we brought in. We didn't bring a lot of them in, but we feel like we hit on all of them, especially in the kicking game as well.
All right, Coach, last question for you. You open in prime time at home against Ohio State. What could that game mean to this Minnesota program?
Well, I mean, you play 12 games, and you don't get to pick when you get to play people, and they just show up on the schedule. And we get an opportunity with a top 5 opponent in Huntington Bank Stadium, new name. But if you want to win a championship, it doesn't matter where you play people. You're going to have to find a way to win a lot of games, and you're going to have to start fast, accelerate in the middle, and finish strong. Whether that we're talking about the Ohio State game or whether we're talking about the entire season. So we've got to find a way to be at our best, which, our team's humble enough to know, and you don't show up and you're not at your best, you're going to get your butt kicked. But we also are pretty confident to know that if we do play our best, we're a pretty good football team.
Head coach of the Gophers, P.J. Fleck, always a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Coach.
Thank you very much. Row the boat, Sky Ma, go Gophers.
We're visiting with offensive coordinator Mike Sanford. Coach, this is your second year as offensive coordinator here, but last year certainly wasn't a normal install year, if you will. This year you've had your spring practice, you've had a regular camp, getting ready for a regular season. How is it different this year than last?
Well, it's a world's difference. I think the biggest piece is relationships. As you know, with your incredible track record as a coach, I mean, relationships is everything, and it's not just the camaraderie that you build from coach to player and player to player and coach to coach. But it's also the understanding of what makes players tick, the relationships that you build, and understanding what players' strengths, what their weaknesses are. I think we went into last season without the full knowledge of what each one of our players' strengths were, and that was, it was a great job by the offensive staff of giving me everything that they could, information-wise. But until you actually go through it and you have a chance to see an off-season, you have a chance to see spring ball, and be able to see how guys respond, how players respond to failure, and how players respond to success. How they interact with press coverage out on the perimeter, how they interact with zone coverage. Those are things that I think have helped us as an offense to not only install the entirety of the offense that I want to put in, but also for us to be able to have the success in putting the right guys in the right types of situations, and to feel like I'm in a completely different place a year, under my belt, fully understanding a normal cycle.
Coaching is so much relationships, and I could make the case that especially between an offensive coordinator, a quarterback like Tanner Morgan, you didn't have a chance to develop that last year. What are some specific things that Tanner has done since you're back on a normal schedule?
First thing that he did, and what we didn't have the opportunity to do, even as a quarterback, is to develop that bond, that cohesiveness with a receiver core that, frankly, had a lot of pieces to fill in for, with the departure of Tyler Johnson and, Rashad playing essentially a little bit over half of the year and not being a part of the offseason at times, and then going in and starting back up at the very end of fall camp. This year, Tanner's had the opportunity, and I've challenged him to do so, to just throw with everybody. because nowadays, and even in 2021, we don't know what's ahead of us. We don't know who's going to be in there, who's not going to be in there. And that's where I've seen the biggest growth is his camaraderie, the cohesiveness, the synergy that you see between Tanner and all the receivers, all the tight ends, now all the running backs, instead of just the top 2 or 3 guys, which 2019 was for him. I mean, it was Tyler Johnson, Rashad Bateman, Chris Hotman-Bell, almost every snap. And it was Rodney Smith, Mo Ibrahim, Shannon, every single play. So last year was a lot. There was a lot more growth that had to happen with more guys. So I'd say that's number one. Then number 2 for us is he and I have spent a whole lot of time together. Right. And now that we have a chance to do that in person, he's the most fun quarterback I've ever coached. He brings a smile to my face because he wants to be coached. He wants to be challenged. He wants to know what's inside my head. And when you have that as an offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, and a quarterback, and you feel that in the box, and you feel that quarterback's playing the game through your eyes, that's something special. And we know that doesn't happen all the time. And that's what our goal and our aim is to be able to capture that lightning in a bottle and let it go play.
You have an experienced offensive line. You have Mo Ibrahim in the backfield, outstanding running back. Tell us about some of the wide receivers and other skill players that maybe we don't know much about.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that's been the biggest hole that we have to plug in. Last year, we didn't connect the dots in the passing game like we needed to. That's the bottom line, and that ultimately falls on me. We went to work, both in our schematic enhancements, additions, being able to get this to the point that we want it to, that fit the skill sets that we have, and then really enhancing our roster. I think the game that really stands out to me when I watched the film was the Wisconsin game. Now, granted, we didn't score, 35 points in that game, but there were a lot of examples of young receivers stepping up and making plays in a big moment. And even some of the receivers against really, really good corners getting good releases, being able to see the speed that they bring to the game. And those guys in particular, returning second-year player in Daniel Jackson, right, who was thrust into a starting role basically right off the bat against Michigan as a true freshman. Michael Brown-Stevens, you saw him in that game make a critical touchdown that essentially forced overtime. He's now growing into his role. And we had to go out and enhance the roster. Dalen Wright, it's a receiver that we got from Texas A&M. I think he brings a very unique skill set. He's done a really good job of learning and coming up to speed. Clay Gerry, he's one of those guys that's been around in this program, a fifth-year senior, earned a scholarship. Now we're starting to see him emerge, and his skill sets are improving. And the trust that we have between the entire group and him is huge. Doug Emilion, these are all receivers that we're really excited about. And every day, we're putting Tanner in with a different set of guys, knowing that there's going to be different points in the year where they're going to emerge. There's going to be different points in the year where somebody gets a nick. But we all know it all starts and finishes with Chris Hotman-Bell. And he's really developed into that one. He truly is a one. He's a special player. He's got an unbelievable mindset as a football player. One of my favorite receivers I've been around because he truly does want the ball thrown up in his direction at any time, and he's ready for it. But if you call outside zone or you call inside zone, he's going to put his hat on you too. And that's the kind of mindset that we want at the receiver position, not just the ability to make plays in the pass game, but the full mindset of I'm going to be a dog and I'm going to go find a way to make plays.
Appreciate your time. Have a great year.
Hey, great talking to you, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Joshua had a chance to watch Minnesota go through practice today. A lot of situational stuff, a lot of special teams. That being said, though, still some opportunities to glean just how good this team can be. What jumped out at you?
Yeah, I think it was both lines of scrimmage, and you start off with the defensive line, and we had Boye Mafe standing up here with us, and he made me look small, just the way that he's built, and they've got a lot of guys who look like that. So just from a body type standpoint, I think they're there. They're also really intelligent guys, too, and you can see that through the communication and some of the situations they were going through today, which I think puts them in a great position. The other thing is they have a lot of veteran players as well, so that experience plays into it. You look at the offensive line, it's the same thing. A bunch of big guys up there, really good-looking bodies. They can move around. They have to protect their quarterback. I think that's going to be big. It's a point of emphasis, but I think they have the right group of guys up there to do it.
154 combined career starts between those offensive linemen coming into this year. You mentioned the defensive line. Look, they have to get better defensively. We saw last year averaged nearly 7 yards per play allowed. Now, they did improve as the year went on, but aside from that depth on the defensive line, what gives you hope this D can be better?
Well, I think it's just the experience. And last year was a hard year for everybody, but you kind of look at some of the issues that they had to go through. Their lineup was never the same from game to game, and they had to throw guys in there that they didn't think were going to play at all. And that's a difficult spot to be in. So when you have those guys that kind of have those scars, those wounds, those calluses, and they come back, they have a little bit of a different perspective. And I'm a true believer believer that the only way to get better at the game of football is to actually play the game of football. And now they have enough guys who have done that. So just from the experience alone, watching them out there flying around, communicating, and just being able to come together as a group, that's the other thing they talked about, was there was a lack of connection last year. I think it really helps them for this year.
Did some good work in the portal, too, particularly along that defensive line and at the linebacker spot as well. Some guys who will clearly contribute. Look, it's obvious the Gophers are going to be better. We'll find out just how much better in that opener, September 2nd against Ohio State. That should be a relatively good gauge.
I think it'll be a fun one.
Of how far they've come.